right, good afternoon. My name is Joe Fungi, and on behalf of the University of Montana, I want to welcome you to really a multi-pronged event today. We have a guest speaker. Andy will speak in a few minutes, and so we're delighted to have you here with us today. We also have a delightful reception that's being prepared outside while we're in here for our event. And then today also represents an opportunity to launch a new collaboration. And before we get there, I'm going to provide just a few kind of introductory remarks. So first, it's important to understand that what we do at our public universities and institutions is of tremendous economic impact and benefit to our state and our region. Education is a launching pad for entrepreneurs and is an important factor in attracting and retaining new businesses that are creating new jobs. Our campuses are also integral to the arts, music, and literature scenes, while we are also providing education and training for a skilled workforce to give us a thriving community. Our faculty are also researching some of the world's biggest problems and even creating companies to employ those that we are educating. These activities work together to stimulate local and regional sustainability in an ever-increasing global competitive community. Secondly, it's important to note that this cycle is alive and well here in Western Montana, and specifically at the University of Montana. And there are many, many examples of that, which would take up all of Andy's time if I were to go through the list. But just from an economic point of view, there are many great local employers, many of which are here. Submittable, DataSmart Solutions, Sunburst Sensors, which rose to the global front just a few years ago. Local restaurants, Five on Black, Market on Front, these just name a few, but all of which have very deep roots ingrained within the University of Montana. Much of this success and connection has been made possible through a commitment by the university over the past 5 years to create better and stronger alignment between the business community and the university. And so if you have your card in front of you, I'm going to use that to kind of talk through sort of the programs that have been established in the past several years. So at the very top, you see the Blackstone Launchpad. This is a program for primarily students, but anyone who's looking to start a new idea, maybe a new business. Blackstone provides entrepreneurial coaching, ideation, and venture creation to support that community. Paul Gladen is here. Where's Paul? Paul runs that program. Thank you, Paul, for all your efforts. Once a business sort of formulates their idea and they need to kind of put some meat on the bones and some financials and a business plan, they can go see Jen Stevens at the Small Business Development Center, which offers free one-on-one business advising to entrepreneurs. We know that training a tech workforce as businesses continue to grow and computers and data situations, web design are all becoming a critical component to every business. And so as a business starts to need tech support, tech jobs, we also have a program that helps to develop that workforce. And Amita Greer runs the Montana Code School, which teaches students how to become full-stack junior web developers. And they've graduated over 70 people, counting their current cohorts, in just over a year's time, which is pretty remarkable. Once a business starts to add jobs, it needs to go from 2 to 10 to 20 to 100 jobs. They need a place to do that, a community to be a part of. And so they can go over on East Broadway to the Montana Technology Enterprise Center Business Incubator, which is a 32,000 square foot facility focused on helping to grow high-tech enterprises and businesses. Once a business starts to get more sophisticated and go after bigger and more complicated contracts and even government grants, they can go and work with Patty Cox at the Montana Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which offers personal, timely advice on contracting with the government, working with everyone from a guy with a gravel truck to work from the Forest Service to someone that wants to sell to the U.S. military. Of course, globalization is a part of every business, particularly as they start to think outside of Montana. And so as part of the effort, we also have the Montana World Trade Center, which is overseen by Brigitte Miranda Freer, which really strengthens Montana businesses through international trade and providing strategic export services. And then once a business starts to become to a point where it really needs to think about building, retaining leadership, teams, executive education, we have our newest member, Kate McGoldrick, who oversees iLead, which is a program that provides business education, learning solutions, and thought leadership. And so the significance of today is that we will all align and collaborate under the common umbrella of Accelerate Montana moving forward for today. And the alignment will provide even greater impacts than the ones that are noted here, which is over 700 businesses that are collectively mentored, contracted with, or helped annually by all of these programs. And so with that said, there's no better way than to start something new, but to stimulate great discussion with friends and colleagues about sort of their secret sauce and how they do things. And so as a lead into our speaker, I'm going to hand our event over to Brigitte, who will take it from here.
We're recording this today through Montana Community Access Television. That's why we have a mic, because I think the acoustics are pretty great in here. So as Joe mentioned, the Montana World Trade Center assists businesses across the state of Montana with their international trade endeavors. And what that means on a more granular level is that we're the ones they can call to help them build out or carry out their export strategy. And that's really helpful in a state like Montana that has largely small, medium, and really just micro businesses populating our state. They don't have dedicated international departments, right? So our clients really work best with us when they work with us as an extension of their business development team or their sales and marketing team that's dedicated specifically to international. And I think that concept, that extension of the core team, is something that carries over to all the Accelerate Montana programs. We are passionate about what we do, and why wouldn't we be? We have the opportunity to work with smart, talented, engaging risk takers every day who are putting it on the line and trying to grow business in Montana, or just grow an idea into a business in Montana. So we get to participate in that process with them. And they're grateful to us, and certainly we're pleased with the impact that we have collectively. Joe mentioned the 700 companies, and individually with each one of those companies. But that doesn't negate our obligation to continually reevaluate our programs and our service model, and to seek out best practices and to learn from others. And so that's a good segue here for me. In 2015, I first connected with Dr. Andy David. And over the last year and a half in particular, I've come to learn much more about Israel's approach to economic development and entrepreneurship and how they tie together. Here in Montana, we're very proud of our distinction that we are the #1 state in the nation for startups per capita. We should be very proud of that distinction. Israel shares a similar distinction on a global scale. I think, and I'm sure Andy will reference this, the highest concentration of startups in the world in Israel. So I think we have much to learn from each other in that regard. And one thing that I know is of particular interest to me is the role that the Israeli government plays in fostering entrepreneurship and startup activity. In fact, I think I would categorize the Israeli government in this regard as really, they're a risk taker. And I think that that is certainly a paradigm that at least has not traditionally existed here in U.S. government institutions. So I am looking forward to hearing some thoughts from Andy today about the secret sauce of Israel's success. And so with that, Andy, would you come on down? Great.
Hi, everyone. I hope I didn't forget my license for concealed microphones. I think in Montana you don't need one, right? So it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. You see the flyer here with my picture on it. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you my mother's address. Please take it and mail it to her. She'll be very proud. Thank you, Missy, and Brigitta for hosting me and for preparing this. Thank you very much. So let's start. This is a picture I took on my summer vacation in 2015 in Tel Aviv. There's a nice promenade. This is thousands of people doing yoga at the same time, simultaneously. I wasn't doing yoga, I was running after my kids. But I thought that this is one angle of Israel that you often don't see. So thought I will start with this, and of course this is the topic of today's lecture. But to go back to the first sentence, when you think about Israel, many people think about this. They think about holy places and camels and deserts, and they think about politics and peace and war and Israelis and Palestinians. Sometimes I myself forget that I'm not the Consul General of Israel, but I'm the Consul General of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because this is all the questions that I get. So I want to talk about Israel that we know. What does we as Israelis think about when we look at ourselves? So these are some pictures from Tel Aviv and Herzliya, and this is Bar Refaeli, one of our top models, and this is the new Wonder Woman, which is an Israeli actor, a very successful actor who's served in the IDF, and this is how we look at ourselves. Kind of a different look. But I wanted also to bring some cool facts that will give you a deeper understanding of what Israel is. Okay, so it's milk. Our cows produce the most milk in the world, more than the Dutch. Although many of them were imported from the Netherlands initially, but with technology, you can do wonders. Trees. We are the only country in the world that entered the 21st century with more trees than the 20th century. We plant a lot of trees. Museums. We have the highest number of museums per capita. Solar. More than 9 out of 10 Israeli homes use solar power to heat water. We're very environmental aware. And every house, basically almost every house in Israel, heats their water with the sun. And as we like to say, the sun is more reliable than the Saudis. I told you about the yoga, how much we love yoga, me not included. Theater. We have, I think, the highest, according to some data that I read, the highest percentage of original theatrical productions per capita in Israel. And more people visit theaters in Israel every night per capita than any other country. Water reuse. We recycle 84.5% of our water. The second country after Israel, does anybody know?
It tells us.
Oh, it says, yeah. Good, you're watching. Okay, so Spain, you know which is the third country? It's Netherlands, somewhere in the teens, I don't know, 16 or 17 or 18%. Do you know how much the United States recycles?
Less than 1%.
Average of 1%, between 1 to 3, depends on which state, which city. So there's more things to do. And when it comes to innovation and technology of things that affect everybody in this room, for sure. Here are some examples. So the first cellular phone, Motorola. The first text message by a company called Converse. Motorola developed it in Israel. Okay, the first cell phone. Instant messaging, okay, by the company called ICQ. So all the instant messaging you're sending, we're to be blamed for. Viber, Tango, I mean, all kind of technologies. If you have kids and they like to play the Kinect, how do you call it? 360, Xbox 360. That's technology that was invented in Israel. The flash drive, what we call in Israel disk on key, the memory drives, that was invented in Israel. And I almost invested in that company. Now, the difference between Israelis and the rest of the world, every time you meet an Israeli, he will tell you about the investments he didn't do. He'll tell you about the guy who came to him and told me, listen, I have a great idea, you should invest with me. And I didn't invest and I lost this opportunity, to show you that we're not afraid of failure. We're not ashamed of it. And I will talk about it a little later as well. Okay, what else do we have there? The first antivirus, some say that also the first virus was invented in Israel. The firewall, a company called Check Point. Again, Israeli companies. Everybody searches with Google, so automatic search completion, that was created in Israel, developed in Israel. And later, you'll understand why Google decided to develop that in Israel. Okay, and I will talk about it soon. Rewalk, I don't know if you saw that. This is a device like an external skeleton that you connect to your feet, and you control it, and it takes people who are sitting in wheelchairs, and now they can walk. Okay, so that was Israeli invention. Is given imaging, this is a little pill that you swallow, and it will take photos or videos of your intestine to help you detect early cancer. Mostly in your small intestine. I don't know if there are any doctors here in the audience, but the small intestine is really hard to look at in other ways. Drip irrigation, I guess in a state that knows so much about agriculture, I don't have to talk about why that is important. Navigation, Waze. Waze was sold for $1.1 billion to Google. So the Google Maps that you use, they base themselves on the Waze technology, and you also have the Waze application. If you're going to a busy city or a city with a lot of transportation, Waze will tell you which street you should avoid, which street, and online. Tell you what's happening now. It's kind of a crowdsourcing navigation system. Okay, some more, and we'll go on. So yeah, we were known, when we were established, we were known for the oranges. I heard that there's some people from Europe here, right? The back, maybe? No? Yeah? A little. Okay, so in Europe, a lot of people knew Israel for the brand name Jaffa. Jaffa was the brand name for the oranges and grapefruits. So basically, we moved from Jaffa to Java. And today, there's so many things. Some of them I talked about. You know what this is? Ladies. It's not a shaver. It's like the thing that pulls your hair from your legs or something. And it's not painful. Invented in Israel. Okay. Solar and other things. So I put the two maps of Montana and Israel here for you to look at. By the way, I have to tell you that everybody in Israel knows about Montana. Why? Because the most popular ice cream parlor in Tel Aviv since the 60s was a place called Montana Ice Cream. I don't think they sold ice cream that was made here, but the brand name they gave it, they called it Montana. And everybody in Israel knows about Montana ice cream. And actually, we have some cult Israeli movies where the plot and the dating and all the story takes place at the Montana ice cream place. So if you say that you're from Montana, people will offer you ice cream in Israel. So these are the two states. What I thought was I was trying to find similarities. So yeah, we have the Mediterranean here, and you don't, but we do have some similarity where our west or northwest is more populated, and also we have a separation between areas which are more wet and cold, and the south and the east and the south which are more dry. So I found some similarities. But when it comes to the size, Israel size is like New Jersey. So Montana is much bigger. And that's an advantage. Why? Because not only that we're small, but we live in a tough neighborhood. So a lot of our resources we have to put as a country into defense. And Montana as a state, I think, can maybe enjoy the fact that you have a little better neighbors than we do. But that's to give you a perspective of the size of Israel. Okay, So let's look at Israel's performance, okay? And this is kind of a snapshot of where we are now, and I'm going to also discuss of how we got there, okay? So according to the IMD World Competitiveness Yearbook in 2014, we see that when it comes to business expenditure on research and development, we can see that Israel is first. Total expenditure on research and development, Israel is second, and I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. Entrepreneurship, so you can see it yourself. We're in a pretty good place in so many categories that refer to competitiveness compared to other countries. The US is here. Scientific research and innovative capacity. So if we look at that of quality of scientific research and level of innovation, then you'll see that Israel and the United States are pretty close to each other, and both are in the leadership positions. Okay, so you find Singapore there and Israel, and then many other countries are somewhere along those lines here. Now, if I want to describe to you an ecosystem, there are a few components that I need to talk and I need to describe. One of them is, first of all, the intensity of the research and development of a country. Then the intensity of the business sector involvement in this R&D, in the innovation, in the creativity industry. Multinational corporations, the involvement of multinationals in a certain area, geographical area, ecosystem, in this case Israel. What's the involvement of those multinationals in Israel? And then the venture capital, of course, very crucial to innovation. And the last thing will be the startup themselves. So basically, when you look at other countries, you would like to look at all those components. And I will go one by one, okay? Now, I forgot to say that if you have a question about something that I'm describing or telling you, please don't hesitate, raise your hand, and I'll try to address it. So don't wait till the end, okay? Good. So let's talk about the R&D intensity. So when you look at the expenditure on research and development as percentage of your GDP, this is not absolute numbers, okay? It's hard to compare the United States, 350 and 320 million Americans, to a country of 8 million, right? But when it comes to the percentage of the GDP that is spent on R&D, you can see that Israel is number one. It was not always like that, but it is in many recent years. And you can see other countries, 4.3%. This is a lot. And if you take into consideration that we don't have enough margins because of our very large expenditure on defense, we spend a little over 6% on defense. The US spends about 4%. If you look at other countries, let's say the Scandinavian countries, they spend maybe 2%. So 6% on defense and then 4.3% on R&D. It's a lot. Now, as I said, it wasn't always like that. Basically, it started somewhere in the early 90s, where we understood that if we want to make a quantum leap in our economy, and the trigger for that was a beginning of a huge wave of immigrants coming from the Soviet Union after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we understood that they need jobs. They need housing. We need to absorb them. The conversation in the United States when it comes to immigrants, it's more about immigration, allowing them to enter. Is it legal, illegal? In Israel, the conversation is about absorption. Not just how they come in, but what do you do with them after they come in? How do you absorb them into your economy, into your society? And one idea, I think a good idea, was let's invest in innovation. Let's create economies instead of trying to integrate so many people into existing economies. A lot of people, who know Israel, they talk about the talent, the density of talent and all that. And maybe I'll spend a few words about that later. But many of them think that this density of talent started in Israel somewhere in the 90s. And if I was to ask the question, when did it start? The answer is not in the 90s. Israel always had that. Okay, we always had a high level or high percentage of engineers and doctors and professors, and we have at least 2 universities that were established in Israel even before the state was established, the Hebrew University and the Technion. But we were established in Israel. Israel was established as a socialist country. So the policies that were in place were not very friendly to entrepreneurship. Were not so friendly to privatization, to what we call the startup culture in a way. And when we started to change our policies, all this energy of talent was able to present itself. So let's look a little bit about how it presented itself. Business sector intensity. So let's look at the expenditure on research and development by the operating sector. So you can see that government spends, of course, spends, and the higher education, mostly the universities and some of the research institutions. But when you look at what's making the big difference is the business sector. It's the companies, is the startups even themselves, how much they invest in research and development. I think this is the key for the understanding of Israel's success. And why is that? Why did they decide? What happened here or here or here that didn't happen before? So let's look at the effect on our economy. So starting at a certain point, 1975, Israel recovering from a very terrible war we had, the Yom Kippur War, the 1973 war, and still very socialist economy. And going up to the 90s, as I said, where the change started, if the industrial exports will continue the same way, it will reach somewhere around there. But this is the reality. This is what actually happened when it comes to the exports, the industrial export of Israel. And this is because of the investment in R&D, in research and development. That was the key. So this is the actual direction. And this was worth, in numbers of about 6-7 years ago, it was worth about 25 billions. About 10% of our GDP was because of the investment in research and development. The return was enormous. We're very famous for our agriculture, for the innovation level of agriculture, but agriculture today is maybe 1% of our economy. It used to be 30, 40, 50% of our economy back in the day. Now that it has decreased, we still produce a lot, and we actually increased our production in agriculture. But when you compare it to the more the high-tech industries, you see that it becomes very, very small. And this is a little bit about the different sectors. So if you look at exports by technological intensity, so of course, high-tech is leading. And then the more sophisticated or the less sophisticated technology is, the less of exports. So this is basically the high-tech is the locomotive that drives today Israeli success, Israeli innovation, or Israeli exports and prosperity. And this is a little bit about the numbers, like the proportion. So 5 times more high-tech compared to traditional. Okay, now let's look at the business share of the R&D, okay? The relative expenditure. So this, again, this is not absolute numbers, these are the percentage. So you can see that the share of the business sector in Israel in investing in R&D is the highest among the OECD countries. It's the organization of the developed countries. And the average of the OECD is here. Okay, so it's 67, in Israel is 80%. And then you can see, you can differ between the green and the blue, but the blue is the government and higher education is in green. So I spoke a little bit about the business sector intensity, and I showed you how high it is in Israel. Let's talk a little bit about the startups and the venture capitals. So again, this is where we are now. Israel is considered, and in this case they wrote Tel Aviv, but Haifa and Jerusalem, they're less than an hour drive, so everything in Israel is basically Tel Aviv. So we are the second largest source of innovation after Silicon Valley. This is a very significant achievement. Again, it wasn't like that until 20 years ago. This is relatively new. And you can see that many of the other top countries are basically cities or metropolitan areas in the United States, right? So let's look at the venture capital investments as percentage of GDP. So again, here Israel is leading in that. And you can see the United States is right after Israel. So there is a very strong venture capital environment in Israel. If you said, again, 25 years ago, you said venture capital in Israel, nobody would know what you're talking about. This is, again, a new phenomenon. Part of it is the investment in research and development. And the outcome is a lot of venture capital, a lot of capital that is willing to take the risk and investing in the new technologies that rise from Israel. Now let's compare it to other areas. And I think this is a very powerful comparison. So, of course, venture capitals in the United States is the highest in the world. But when you compare the size of the population, the size of the country, if you want, then our numbers are basically 2.5 times more than the United States per capita. And when you compare ourselves to Europe and to China, so when you look at China, we're punching 300 times above our weight compared to China when it comes to venture capital. And this is a little bit to show you what kind of sectors those ventures and the investment go to. So I don't think there's a big surprise here. IT, life sciences, semiconductors, internet, clean tech. Clean tech is growing recently, maybe because of more demand around the world, but just to give you an example. Now, what is the values that is being created? So, as I said, the venture capitalists invest in small companies hoping that they will be acquired and they'll make a profit. So here, these are a few examples. So I mentioned Waze before, sold for $1 billion to Google, and here are a few other examples, and this is just a taste of it. 6 years ago, my best friend from high school came to me and said, I have an idea. I want to do slot machines on social media. But not the ones that, not a casino. You cannot earn anything. Just people can play. And if they, after a while, if they run out of chips, they can buy some more chips. That's the business model. 10 months later, I told him, you're crazy. I wouldn't play that. And the skill, the only skill you need to play that game is to have a finger and to press and see the wheels turn, and then press again and see the wheels turn, okay? So I told him, you're crazy. And he got pretty easy, got some investors, venture capitals to invest in him. They knew him from before. 10 months later, Caesars from Vegas bought him for $160 million. And I think 5 months ago, Caesars sold his company, where he's still the CEO, to a Chinese company for $4.4 billion. 4.4. So there's so many stories like that in the United States. But what I want to tell you is that those stories occur in Israel on such a high rate all the time. And the rate is increasing. all the time. So it's growing exponentially. And if you look at how many Israeli companies are on NASDAQ, you can see that after China, we're right up there. So the most number of companies on NASDAQ are American, then Chinese, and then Israeli companies. Israeli companies on NASDAQ. And the reason for that is the high value that is created through the investment of the venture capital into that innovation. Let's talk a little bit about multinational corporations. Here again, I think that's one of the keys for our success, and I think that this could be very relevant to Montana as well. So let's look at the number, the share of local affiliates of foreign companies in the business research and development, meaning that a company like Google comes to Israel, opens shop, not to sell products, but to do research. To do the research, to do it over there. Again, here Ireland and Israel are at the top. And this is just one example of some of them. We have over 300 multinationals coming to Israel and opening shop. Not all of them American. We have Samsung and Deutsche Telekom and others. And the question is why? Why would they come to Israel for their R&D? Let's see, before answering that question, I want to show you a little bit about the effect of this presence of multinationals who are coming. I know that from traveling around the world, there are people who don't like those companies coming. They don't like the big powers, if you want, the capitalist power coming to their countries. But in our case, it worked really, really well, really, really well. So 9% of employment, 50% of the production of the country, 28% of exports are because of companies from abroad coming to Israel deciding right there in the Middle East, we want to open our shop. And you can see, again, a comparison between different countries of the presence of foreign multinationals. So again, this is expenditure on research and development. This is the key word here, research and development by different financing sectors. And when you look at the foreign, okay, in blue, you can see the significant number compared to any other country of multinationals who are coming to Israel to do their R&D. Okay, let's go ahead and talk a little. Oh, this is again. So today we have more than 200 research and development centers. The multinationals are doing about 40% of the business R&D and employing a lot of people. Okay. Role of the government. Role of the regulators, if you want, who need to regulate the market and create this environment. And as I said, up to the 90s, the same government did not do such a good job. So what's the role of the government? Okay? And in this case, in the Israeli government, it's the Ministry of Economy usually who takes care of that. So first of all, the execution of government's policies. We have about 37 different programs that help promote this innovative research and development. Now, I'm going to present to you maybe 4 of those programs, maybe 5, because otherwise 37 is going to take us the whole evening, and it's going to be boring. But I'm going to mention 5 which have been very, very successful. We enable, but we don't lead the market. The government will not come and say, okay, this year we want to promote robotics, or this year we want to promote stem cell research. Because we believe that government don't know. They don't have the knowledge, they don't have capability to decide which sector, but they can enable. They can say, okay, we're going to create some tools, we're going to open some doors, we're going to create an environment for you to decide, the market to decide where it wants to go. Okay, so do no harm. And the goal is not to make money, but to strengthen the industry. It's not about more income to the government. Yes, eventually when there's more business, there'll be more taxes, but the purpose here is to create innovation and not to find creative ways to take more money from the entrepreneurs. So here's some of the policies. We're financing the firms through grants payable by royalties, no equity. So when the state or government or one of the programs that the government gives you a grant, we don't expect to take equity. We don't dilute your company. So it's an incentive for companies to do take some of those grants, because it's better than to go to a venture capital, which will dilute your company, right? Or a bank or other things that will give you a loan, and then you have to pay interest, etc. So in this case, no equity. Eligibility depends on the technological level. So the criteria is the level of innovation. Okay, if you're not really innovating, you may look for your funding somewhere else, not with the government. The government is interested to create new sectors, new technologies. And also, it has to have a business potential. If your market is your mother and her friends, although it's an amazing technology, not going to invest in it. It has to be something that can have a very large market. Investments are matched by private money, meaning that you will not get a grant unless you bring also your own money. You have to put some of your risk to show that you're serious, and then we'll consider it. Okay? And also, neutral. As I said a little bit before, we're not picking technologies in advance. Okay? So we're neutral to which sector we should support. So here's, I'm going to talk about, as I said, maybe 4 programs. In this case, it's called the R&D Fund. Simple name. The goal is we want to share the risk with the companies, with the private sectors. We grant up to 50% of the cost of the innovative R&D projects. And as I said, up to 50% of the approved project budget. Now, this is another program. This is second program, if you want. Incubators, okay? We didn't invent it. There are incubators or accelerators. I mean, those names change every 5 years. We used to call them greenhouses, and then incubators and accelerators. So the goal is to transform innovative technological ideas, trick ideas, and turn them into products in companies. Now, the method, an incubator is a private, for-profit entity that grows its portfolio company. So an incubator can start today, and within the next 6 months, they'll find one company that they want to grow, and then 6 months later, they'll find 2 more. So slowly, slowly, they'll get 2, 3, 5, 10, and an incubator will have, let's say, 10, 15, 18 companies on their portfolio. Here comes the secret sauce. Okay? 85% of the budget is financed by the government. OCS is, in Israel, it's the Office of the Chief Scientist. That's the name of the entity within the Ministry of Economy that is granting or making those grants and making those programs, in charge of those 37 programs that I mentioned. Only 15% will be expected to be invested by the entrepreneur who wants to open an accelerator or incubator in that case. I don't think there is anywhere in the world that can match that level of risk-taking or investment sharing like this program of the incubators. And the result is that we have a flourishing environment of incubators in Israel, in technology, in any technology you can think of, from of course IT and cell to water to drone technologies, etc., etc. You had a question, sir?
Yeah, is that, you mentioned earlier that that was financed by royalties. Is that royalties on the profit from those companies?
The grant program, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that where the revenue comes from?
Yeah. So, as I said, we don't expect to make money out of that. So let's say you started a company, sir, and your criteria and your performance was good enough to receive the grant, but unfortunately you failed. You didn't make it. We don't expect you to pay back. But if you were successful and you started to sell and you have a product and you make profit, then we'll expect you to return the amount that you received back to us. Okay? So basically you're not taking any risk by taking the grant from the government. Also, if you have received that grant from the government, you already passed a certain threshold. So now when you're coming to a bank or to a VC or to an angel investor and you're saying, hey, I have this technology, and by the way, I passed the bar of the Office of the Chief Scientist in Israel, it's already like giving you a certificate of seriousness. You're already different than others, right? So this has become a very prestigious. People are actually running after those because of the grant, but also because of the stamp of approval that those grants are giving you. So I spoke about the technological incubators. And here's, again, government can afford the risk. And in many cases where I go and I travel and I meet with senators, congressmen, governors, lieutenant governors, mayors, and others, what we hear is that we need to be very responsible with taxpayers' money, right? Taxpayers' money. We cannot take risk with taxpayers' money. It's the private sector who has to take the risk. In Israel, we think differently. And it's part of our secret sauce. We think that governments, not only that they can afford to take risk, okay, because if you take the risk and you fail, that's it, you're out of business. But if we gave a grant and it didn't work, we're not out of business. We can take risk. And not only that we can take it, but it's our obligation. It's our obligation to share the risk with the people who are wanting to innovate, because eventually it pays off. So let's say the young man who has a company that I visited, and thank you for the socks, I still enjoy them. He opened the company with, let's say, 3 of his colleagues, right? And the first time he tried it, he got a grant, and you know what? It didn't work out. He made a few mistakes, it didn't work out. In this case, it did. Now, you may look at it, or some other countries or governments will look at it, okay, money's lost, right? We gave him a grant, he didn't succeed, money went down the drain. Wrong. He learned the lesson. Next time, because if he has this entrepreneurial spirit, that doesn't go away. And if the country encourages him to take risks, not be afraid of failure, okay, even if he failed, he will come back in a year or two with better ideas, with better practices. Not only him, but all his 3 friends, each and every one of them will come with his own idea. So out of one failure, sometimes we'll get 2, 3 successful companies 3 to 5 years later. It's like a tuition. The government subsidizes your tuition, if you want. And we have by now over 20 years of experience to prove with the numbers. I don't have them here. How does this investment, if you want, of taking the risk, government can afford the risk, how it pays off. How it pays off big time. And the population in Israel was educated that we don't come to our government and say, hey, you're taking risks, too many risks with our taxpayers' money. We're telling them, take the risk because it's worth it for everyone. Okay, another program, third program that I'm going to discuss today called the Magnet. And the idea here, how to combine the academics with the private sector with the help of the government. Because we saw that there is a gap sometimes. There's great ideas at the university level, research at the higher education systems, but somehow it's not translated. There's the disconnect. So what's a better way than to put some money into it? So the method is to create synergetic collaboration between industrial companies and academic research group. And there are several tracks to that. The budget, the grants to the industrial company up to 66%, and the academic partners at least 66%. Okay, so there's a lot of investment here as well. Again, no royalties. And I asked John before, if there's innovation coming out of the University of Montana, does the university take equity, right? He said sometimes, right? In our case, they don't. Again, not diluting. It's a big incentive for companies to take the risk because we are sharing the risk without sharing the profit afterwards. Okay? This is the fourth program, and part of the reason why I'm here. And this is the international collaborations. So you'd say, okay, a company is successful. Let's take a company in Korea. The Korean market is about 40 million people. They build a company which is selling a product, and now they grew beyond their expectations, and now they want to globalize. So maybe they have to change the language of whatever product they have. The mentality is different. They have to do a lot of adjustments. So after being so focused on the Korean market, this transition into globalization, into selling to the rest of the world, sometimes is so prohibitive that they don't go beyond that threshold. And there are a lot of countries where you see that phenomenon. One of your advantages in Montana, and one of our advantages is or was that we're too small to look just at ourselves, right? We, from the first moment, we have to look outside if we want to be successful. And here is a place where governments can play a role, an important role. Okay? So we're talking about international collaborations, and every hour, and I didn't put all the hours, every hour here represents an active program that we have with the companies. So here we have France, and we have Italy, and we have, what is it here? Was it Thailand? I'm not sure, because we definitely don't have one with Malaysia. China, Korea, as I mentioned, and others. Of course, the United States and Canada. So let's look at some of the details of those programs. What are we talking about? What's the incentive here? So one thing is the binational funds. I think the oldest one is with the United States. We celebrated 40 years for that one, for the establishment. And last visit that I was here, I brought the representative of the BIRD Foundation with me. BIRD stands for Binational Industrial R&D. Okay, the BIRD Foundation. We have similar ones with Canada, Singapore, and others. Basically, what the program says, in simple words, is that if John is developing a product and he is still invested in R&D, if he will find an Israeli company and they can collaborate on the R&D component of it, then the American government will give him $1 for every dollar he invested. The Israeli government will give the Israeli partner $1 for every dollar he invested. So for every dollar that John invests in R&D, now he'll get $3 more. Just by collaborating with an Israeli company instead of a, I don't know, Mexican or Canadian or Brazilian company. It's an incentive that the Israeli government is providing, and the American government in this case, the US government, for our companies to be preferred for those kind of collaborations.
How big is that fund?
That fund is about, I think, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the $35 billion. Sorry. Yeah, billion or million? I think million. But if you're successful, then you repay the fund. Okay? So every year they pick about 12, 13, 14 projects between the United States and Israel. And for 40 years, by now they have a record of over 900 successful collaboration projects between the two countries. And again, we have the same with other countries, and we're continuing to grow this program. Recently, Congress has approved another component to the BIRD, which is called BIRD Energy. So there's an additional fund that is just directed to innovation in the energy sector, alternative energy mostly. And I think last year or 2 years ago, maybe 2 years by now, time flies, Congress approved one more program for another $1 million for innovation in the field of homeland security, focusing on first responders, emergency response and first responders. Okay? Technologies innovated in this sector. Another program are very similar, are agreements or bilateral agreements that we have with countries, but also with states in the United States. So I mentioned the BIRD. This is federal. All states can compete with that. Companies from all states can compete with that. But for example, we established a program specific to California on stem cell research. So now, in addition to a stem cell research company that can apply to the BIRD Foundation, there are more resources through the California-Israel stem cell research. So now it's specific for a state and specific for an industry. And we're looking to do some more in energy with California. Other states that we have agreements with are Massachusetts, Florida focusing more on space technologies, and a few others. Matimop is just a translation from Hebrew of the international arm of the Office of the Chief Scientist. Okay? Horizon 2020. This is a European program. And Israel is participating in this European Union Framework Program. FP, it's the Framework Program 5. So they started with 1, 2, and 3, and Israel started to join from the 5th program. By now we're talking about the 8th program, which is called Horizon 2020, which has 80 billion euro in it. And Israel, by now, is one of the largest recipient of some of those grants. So this is another way for Israel to be participating in international programs that are directed into research and development. Where we are looking to go next and focus more and invest more programs, China and India. That's our direction. Okay. Other components of the secret sauce. So I spoke about the investment in R&D. I spoke about the willingness to take risk. I talk about how government in Israel thinks a little bit different than other governments. Perhaps I talked about this vast network of international agreements that promote the R&D in Israel. And now let's look at some other things. Here in the United States, one thing that I really like is Thanksgiving. I love it. First of all, that cranberry sauce, it's phenomenal. We don't have that in Israel. We eat turkey, but we don't eat the whole turkey. But when I first arrived to the United States professionally, not just as for a month tourism, but that was in 2004 to Chicago. I served in Chicago in the Midwest, and I attended my first Thanksgiving dinner. And I was thinking about it. Why is it that you have a Thanksgiving dinner and we don't have it in Israel? And the answer is that you have a lot of things to say thank you for. Because when the pilgrims came here, they found Turkey. They found lush forests. They found fertile grounds. And some neighbors, new neighbors who helped them, the natives. When we came, we found salt and mosquitoes. There was nothing to say thank you for. This is why we don't celebrate Thanksgiving in Israel. So there are a lot of obstacles. For example, lack of water. Okay, I had a meeting yesterday with the Lieutenant Governor, Montana Lieutenant Governor, and he talked about the problems that Montana is experiencing because of droughts, right? And how it affects, and how Montana is just keeping itself just above the threshold when it comes to the water. And if there's 2 or 3 years, consecutive years of drought, it's going to be a problem. So, lack of water. We had to solve that problem. We had to build a country. We had to build an industry, agriculture. So, you develop the technologies for that. Desalination, drip irrigation, recycling, and many other things. And today, we are, I think, maybe the first country in the world that lives in an area where there are droughts and there are problems of water. We're not Norway. And we're not dependent on rain. We're no longer dependent on rain in Israel. Now, it didn't happen overnight. we had 2 years of drought, and then 3 years of drought, and then a rainy year, and then 4 years of drought, and we didn't solve our problems. I remember times when there were commercials on television, save every drop. They took models, the best models in Israel, and they interviewed them while they showed how their face is drying out, you know, like a beautiful woman turns to be not so beautiful. Just to educate the population, you have to save every drop. There were jokes made. You have to start taking, the government will regulate that you have to start taking showers in pairs. Not to increase the population, but to save water. Okay? So we were really in deep trouble. They started to dry the lawns, the parks. We really hurt. But then we were lucky. We had 10 years of consecutive, 10 consecutive years of drought. It was so bad that we had to solve the problem. And then we started desalination and other things that we're doing today. And therefore, we're no longer dependent on rain. Not only that, but it's a political tool. Today, for example, I'm sure you heard about all the refugees that are from Syria and from Iraq. Many of them ended up in Jordan. Jordan is a very, very dry country. Today, Israel is supplying Jordan far more water than we agreed upon according to the peace agreement that we have with Jordan. Why? Because we can. Just to give those poor people water to drink. Okay? Yes?
Do you think it's important to acknowledge that Israel uses water from West Bank aquifers too, in addition to technology? And under the Oslo Accords, Israel gets 80% of the Palestinian water, and the Palestinians get 20%?
I think that the numbers that you're referring to are not accurate, but according to the Oslo Accords, there are some obligations that the Palestinians had to do. For example, to develop and invest in water infrastructure, to take care of sewage. Today, if you go to a city like Hadera, Hadera is close to the hills, where the Judean hills start, the Sumerian hills start, you cannot sit outside. In the summer, you'll be bitten by mosquitoes because the sewage from the Palestinian towns is draining down. So you're entering into a political question. Israel supplies most of the water to the Gaza Strip today. And Israel created more water for everyone. We now sign an agreement, Jordan, the Palestinian Authority, and Israel, to take water from the Red Sea and channel it all the way to the Dead Sea. It's called the Red Dead Project. And the idea is that while you do that, you'll take some of the water, desalinate it. The drinking water, the fresh water that will produce by this program will go to the Palestinians and the Jordanians. And the brine, I think that's the term you use, will go into the Dead Sea because the Dead Sea is drying out. So we have a lot of problems of the land dropping because of over usage or over drainage of water from the Dead Sea. So to solve an environmental problem, but also a drinking water problem. So there's a committee that sits between Israelis and Palestinians to talk about water. Water is one of the 5 or I would say maybe 6 core issues that we need to solve. And for many years, for I would say between 2000 and when was the Annapolis? 2007 to 2011, approximately 2011, that committee was sitting on a regular basis and trying to solve problems and issues. But then politics got involved, and a lot of the projects that were supposed to be, for example, financed by Qatar, by Saudis, by Denmark, and a few other countries, those money, for example, were not passed, and some of the projects were held. So I disagree with your assumption.
An Israeli settlement gets 2 to 3 times the amount of water that Palestinian city does. And
that's not true.
It is true. I mean,
That's not true. That's propaganda. It's not true.
It's not propaganda.
There is
Palestinian water under international law. it's being used by,
They also harbor terrorists, though.
again, it's international.
Well, if you look at every average Palestinian town and city, they have more fresh water and more constant supply of fresh water than any of the Arab countries surrounding. More than Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt.
He operates the aquifers in the West Bank. It's under Israel's control, the water supply.
Hey, we're going to move on. to a
Yeah, maybe I'll
question
move on.
from Alex Phelps right here,
Yeah.
because I want this to be a focus on entrepreneurship and stuff.
Okay, so I'm just going to finish this slide and then you can ask me a question. Okay? So, security needs. Again, we have some security challenges, and those challenges created a lot of technologies. A lot of technologies that were invented or created within our military, intelligence, Air Force, now are turned into civilian technology. For example, the pill that I mentioned, the one that you swallow and will take photos of your intestine, that was a military miniaturizing cameras, part of a military technology that now has been turned into a civilian one and is helping the private sector or people everywhere. As I said, cybersecurity is a big thing. In 2014, I think about 10% of global investment in cybersecurity were made in Israel because of the knowledge, because of a lot of technology that came out of this necessity. And in 2000, if you think 10% is a lot, in 2015, it went up to 20%. 20% of global investment in cybersecurity were made in Israel. Yes, your question, sir.
Thank you. I wanted to go back to your royalty factors here, and this is the perfect slide for it. So, in one of your programs that you alluded to earlier, it seems like if the royalty is, if the government loans to the company 100 grand, their royalty debt or their royalty position, they have to pay back 100,000. Is the royalty perpetual? Does it continue on?
I'm not trying to. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, in one of your programs,
Yes.
there's various royalty structures here.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in three of them.
Yeah.
The one, second, now this one, the government
Yeah.
licensing. The first one is if the government is to establish a royalty or loan 100,000 to the company, risk-free, let's say it's 100,000. Is the company obligated to 100,000 and then that royalty stops?
Yes.
Okay, that's very interesting. Second thing,
It's repaying. There's a budget.
but it's not, it doesn't go on forever.
No,
Okay,
no,
That's,
no. This is based on a budget. So the Ministry of Economy has a budget, and out of that budget, the Office of the Chief Scientist, which, by the way, the last year they changed the name again to the Innovation Authority. Okay, so let's call it the Innovation Authority. Innovation Authority has a budget. Okay, they're not there to make money. So if they gave you a grant, you return it. That's it. You're free.
that answers that. Second thing, with the programs that are involving universities, and let's say something was developed and you enter into a royalty agreement, same structure, you don't pay perpetually on the royalty?
No.
Okay.
No.
If there's a great technology developed by the military.
I mean, the university will earn because they earn the university or the scientists.
Right.
It's individuals. It's not buildings in the university, but it's the individuals. So there will be earnings from the innovation itself by selling the product and creating a product.
Right, but not a traditional royalty.
But not to the government back.
Okay, or not. Okay, then in this case, if some innovation is developed by the government, i.e. the camera technology or the internet technology, are there royalty agreements that are established? Let's say a company wants to license technology from the Israeli government. Are there royalty agreements established with the Israeli government to pay them fees also?
Well, usually, if we're talking about defense, you talk about defense?
Defense.
Okay. Usually, many of those technologies will be created by veterans. Okay, so they're no longer part of the military.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll talk about it a little later.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll mention some more about that in a moment. Okay, so a combination of many factors. I mentioned the involvement of the supportive government, the research institution, the incubators, if you want. I didn't talk about seasoned angel investors, and by now we're in the process or in the situation where people who were successful once or twice are becoming now investors in others. Experienced entrepreneurs, that comes together. Established multinationals, the multinational who come and open shop in Israel. The VC industry, academic institutions. And I just touched a little bit about the Israeli military, and I'll touch it a little more. And within 2 minutes, I think I'll be over for questions. So, the Israeli military. So this is the symbol of the IDF. This is a symbol of one of our famous units, an intelligence unit called 8200. If you go to Silicon Valley, you'll find a lot of graduates of 8200, or companies that were established by that unit. So what's the advantage? And I think here is, again, another thing that is very similar. I know that Montana has a very high percentage of veterans in the United States. I think maybe second only to Alaska, if I'm not mistaken. So first of all, you have those elite technical units, which are an amazing training grounds for very young adults. You take the brightest and you train them and you prepare them through those elite technical units. The service in the military promotes stating one's mind. So we question authority. We don't have royalty in Israel. And one reason is because everybody serves together. Okay? So there's hardly any hierarchy. And the mentality is we need to make it happen. Why? Because it's not I'm going to lose money, but I may lose life. So it's a different mindset. You learn to operate in a situation where there is no situation where I feel I hit a wall. I hit a wall, I go around, I go above. I go through the window, I go through the chimney, but I have to make it happen. Failure is not an option, okay? Technology and intelligence units do develop the latest tech. And we all know that also from the United States, some of the best technology comes from the military, and then only then it's implemented in the civilian world, okay? If it's cars, if it's aviation, if it's other things. The best and brightest learn to work as team. And teamwork is crucial when you're starting a company. Supporting your team, trusting your team, the ability to take risk as a team, and also to teach leadership. Again, at a very young age, you learn to be leaders. And the networks. Again, something that I saw, at least from the few visits that I had, everybody here knows everybody in Montana. You mention a name, people know him. You know how to get to him. The degrees of separation are very, very few, and it's the same case in Israel. It's a very important part of it is because of the military. Doesn't matter where I grew up, I always know somebody from a different city, a different town, a different region. Why? Because we serve together. And the last thing is kind of always challenging. The chutzpah. I don't know if it translates from Yiddish well, but it's this standing up or not taking no for an answer, not always standing in line. Creates agility and this staying power, if you want. And this is my last slide, and with this I will end. This is from a visit to Israel headed by Mark Zuckerberg's sister, Randy Zuckerberg, who took a group of entrepreneurs from Silicon Valley. They went to visit Israel. And one of the things that I helped arrange for them was a visit to an Air Force base. And the reason for that, I wanted to show them a typical Israeli, or maybe above average Israeli, who at the same age of theirs is serving his country in some of the elite units, in this case Air Force, as pilots, etc., to show them that he's not very different than a successful entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. So we live in Israel, we have to serve. They live in Silicon Valley, they don't have to serve, so they can build their own company. And what was interesting is this last sentence where she wrote basically that they came, they saw the best American technology in Israel and how the Israelis played with it and improved it. So this is part of the military mentality, that you take something that is ready and then you change it and you improve it. If you see Israeli soldiers, when they're wearing their stuff, it's never as they received it. They always improve it, they change it, they pull up, they pull down, they take a wire, they connect it, they add something, they take something. You can't find two which are identical. Because this is part of, again, mentality. You don't take things as they are. You're always trying to improve them and make them better. So with this, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for coming over. And I'm very happy to answer any question that you have.
We'll do really just a couple because then we're going to have to bum rush the buffet out there. But
I have only one question. Talking about the support program by the government, you mentioned about 85% or 15% at different levels. Is there a threshold for investment, like minimum or maximum?
Of the absolute, yes, there are. I mean, if you come with a request for $1 billion, you will not get it, of course. Usually it's in the 100,000. It's in the early stage, in the early stages of those innovations. And I just presented 4 or 5 programs, but in the 37 programs, there are some which are more geared towards very, very early stage. And some of them were a little bit like later stages. Again, helping in those, there's certain industries that are slower than others. For example, if you look at innovation in mobile apps or casino playing like my friend, 10 months, you have a product, okay? But when it comes to, let's say, pharma and things that are connected to infrastructure like energy and water, where you're dependent on the collaboration. When you do research, you're dependent on collaboration of, let's say, cities, municipalities, districts. So those processes are slower. So some of the programs are different when it comes to something which is very, very short term, could be successful very soon, or if it's a pharma company that really needs 5 years, 10 years sometimes before they can come up with a product to the market. You had a question, sir.
Can you explain why so many multinational companies want to come to Israel? Why there are so many startups? And if it is education, which I think it is, maybe explain what the education process is in Israel. What happens after you leave high school?
Well, I'm thinking about the biggest and most famous multinational that started in Israel. It was Intel back in the early 90s. And they were looking for places to, and they were not sure they're going to open in Israel. And our prime minister at the time understood the importance of multinationals, and he gave them basically exemptions from all kind of taxes and employers' taxes and property taxes. So he encouraged them to open shop in a town which is maybe about 45 minutes south of Tel Aviv, kind of arid area. It was kind of a sleepy town. And they decided going to take him on this offer because it was worthwhile for them. So the government was willing to give up on taxes, on revenues, just to get them there. When a company like that comes and starts offering jobs, let's say engineering jobs, and start paying well, then there's the next generation who are looking at, okay, what should I study? And they think, oh, Intel is there. My brother is working for Intel. He's making much more than my father, who worked for somewhere else. So maybe I should go and study the same thing. So one thing that leads to the other. The process is starting slow, but then it accelerates. There's a moment where you get that knee, where it accelerates. Now, you mentioned about the level of education. We have good universities in Israel. We always had them. But we didn't always have the innovation and the multinationals coming. So there is something that has changed, and that is the investment, the government willingness to share the risk and invest in R&D. And some of those multinationals, still today, they'll get incentives, even today. Some of them will get incentives, some of them will not. But I'm not sure that just the education component.
You don't leave high school and go right into college, do you?
Oh, no. In Israel, most people, they go to the military. They go through the military, and I explained part of why that is an important component of the secret sauce. But there are already programs, for example, cybersecurity. There are already programs for 14-year-old and 13 and 15-year-old in middle school where they're teaching them skills that could be useful for cybersecurity, but more important, they're teaching them the ethics, because you can take the skills and become a hacker, right? You can become the dark force. And they want to teach you and educate you and condition you to become a positive force. So that's also part of the education. And it's part of, I think, a greater question of solidarity of the population. And again, when I come to Montana, I feel much more of the Israeli spirit than maybe I feel when I go visit the coast. One more?
Quickie,
Last one.
Brent?
I promise a quick answer. Yeah.
Can you talk about the protection and ownership of intellectual property?
Very similar. Yeah, it's very similar to the United States. The standards are very similar. We have a lot of lawyers who are making a business from protecting intellectual property. We understood that if we don't have a good legal system to protect, innovation will go away. So innovation stays in Israel or keeps going or keeps coming to Israel because they know they're protected.
Very good. Well, we're
Thank you very much.
to wrap it up. Yes. Please join me in thanking.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I just quickly wanted to go through a couple of things here. If you have an interest in Israel, and more specifically have a business interest in Israel, or would like to pursue an R&D collaboration with Israel, Montana World Trade Center is planning a trade mission to Israel the week of May.
Montana World Trade Center is planning a trade mission to Israel the week of May 22nd. And I think that's concurrent with National Science and Technology Week, as well as Biomed, and a conference that has at least partial focus on photonics. So please let us know. And then the second thing I would like to tell you and ask of you or invite you to do is for each of you to go out and visit with someone in your sphere of influence that you think may benefit from something that you learned here tonight, whether it's the Accelerate Montana programs or something that Consul General David shared with us. Please do that. It takes a village, and growing Montana business is, and our economy here, is everyone's business. So